Welcome to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with host Lane Nordland.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cattleman's Call podcast. Lane Nordland with you here today, and I'm excited about our conversation. We're going to be talking about just advice and experiences from leaders in the industry and share their perspectives and where they got to where they are today, and hopefully can help out the next generation of producers out in the countryside as well with some of their perspectives from the countryside, but also from the helm of leadership as well. So join us here today from Idaho is Kim Brackett, the president-elect of NCBA, and Scott Anderson joining us from Oklahoma, who's vice chair of the Policy Division Committee. And we're having this conversation in Denver during the summer meeting of the cattle industry. And Kim, first off, how are things at home in Idaho for you and the family right now?
Well, thanks for having us today, Lane. Super excited to be here. Well, let me tell you, when you look at the map, the drought map, Idaho looks beautiful, except for this sliver across the southern part, which is D4, and that is right where I live. So when people ask me that question, I say, my kids and my family are healthy, but things are a little rough on the ranch right now.
Yeah, well, I've been very ashamed to say how much moisture we've had in my part of Montana. We have neighbors that it's not doing too good. So I got a little sliver that's doing maybe a little better than other parts of Montana.
Good to hear it.
Scott, how are things in Oklahoma here as we move through July 2026 when we recorded this conversation?
I guess spotty would be the best way to put that. There's areas that look really good and have got, adequate to at least green up and look pretty impressive. And then there's other areas that are still crunchy to walk across.
Yeah. And, it's just something we always battle. And I think maybe that's even something we can talk about here today, how even tough times have shaped who you are, maybe advice you received from some of your mentors or family members throughout your time. But, to really just jump into this conversation, Kim, I'll start with you. What were some of the biggest challenges that you've witnessed in your time in the cow-calf space? And what were some of those, how do those experiences influence you and your husband's decision-making today? What were some of those things that come to mind when you're asked that?
So when you ask me that question, and I'm thinking about it from a leadership perspective, when I first started on this leadership journey, I was actually at the Idaho Beef Council. And at that time, our quality as an industry, beef quality was a huge concern. Our consumers were not having a consistent, high-quality eating experience. So when I think about that, and then I look to where we are today, and as an industry, we have pivoted to focus on quality every segment, right? Cow-calf all the way through the supply chain is focused on quality and quality eating experience. And look where we're at, right? I am still stunned that we are producing twice as much prime as we are select. I mean, I can't even really fathom that. So to me, that's one of the biggest challenges that our industry has faced, and a huge success story when you think of beef demand supporting where we're at right now. How do we address that on our ranch and maintaining that focus on quality? I think one of the things we do management-wise is always keeping an eye on that consumer eating experience. So that might mean we're looking at carcass CPDs when we're talking about genetics, my husband and I. It might mean animal care is a huge part of what we do, making sure everybody's BQA certified, we're maintaining that certification. It's making marketing decisions at the right time because we know, especially those cull cows, right? They're headed right to the supply chain. So making sure that the decisions we are making are going to have a positive impact for those folks at the end of the supply chain.
Well, great thoughts. So thanks and I wrote down another question to follow up here. I'm going to come back to that in a second. But Scott, this is your first time on the Cattleman's Call podcast, so welcome to the show. I know we've done other interviews throughout the years as well, but tell us a little bit about your background and your work in the livestock sector.
Thanks for having us this afternoon. It's been looking forward to this. Grew up in eastern Nebraska on a diversified livestock and row crop, small operation. Went to Lincoln for, both my bachelor's and a master's, because at the time it was in the mid 80s and, interest rates in the teens and things like that. And the family decided, it wasn't a wise decision to try to come back at that point. So that's why I stayed and got a master's, and met some people in the course of that ultimately they moved to Garden City and got involved with some feedlot research projects down there. And so they called one day as I was getting ready to get out of school and invited me down to come to work there too. And was there doing some of those early, production-oriented research projects for a couple of years, and in the process met some other people that have ultimately led to me moving to the Panhandle of Oklahoma and joining a management team at a commercial feed yard there, and rest is history on that side. During all of that, I got very involved with Texas Cattle Feeders Association. Um, was honored to serve as chairman of that organization in 2021. Also was involved with the development of the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, and served there as for 7 years as treasurer. And all the time on top of all of that was NCBA and various roles and playing there. And so that's kind of what's brought me here today to this.
So you've seen a lot of evolution maybe in the feeding space, in the beef demand space since the 1980s as well. I guess what is one area you've really seen a positive change towards that? I know we talked on beef demand, a little bit too, but how has this evolved into really an opportunity for so much more opportunities for the feeding sector, for the cow-calf sector, and then bringing that back to the consumer as well?
Kim alluded to it just a little bit ago about, the inconsistency that we had early on. And I think a lot of that was just attributed to the production practices at the time, because it seems to me that the focus at that point was just to get cattle in, get them up on feed, and get them just market acceptable, and then roll them out and bring the next set in. And consequently, most of those cattle the good grading sets would probably be between 35 and 45% choice, which obviously leads to a very inconsistent eating experience. And about that same time is when BQA was starting to come into play, or was evolving anyhow. And you look at the progress that we've made since that came along, and the checkoff and just all of these tools we've used to focus our production back on quality, and the progress we've made is just astounding. And we all learn something listening to our customers, and I hope we always keep that mindset.
Now, my generation that is coming into the business, whether with family or starting out on their own, we've always seen a high demand for beef, it seems. The millennials and then that generation behind us. We always get blamed for everything, the millennials, but yeah, we're getting our knees hurt and we have gray hair. But when we look at the demand for beef now versus what it was in the 80s and the 90s and the work that went into promoting the product, what is something that maybe my generation is not maybe considering when we're talking about consistently holding that consumer demand for the beef product, maybe just in terms of BQA or promotion and research through the checkoff? What is something maybe my generation it isn't thinking about because we never grew up in a time when beef demand was lagging behind because consumers weren't turning to that at the grocery store? What are your thoughts on that? Either one of you can jump in. Sorry to throw that one at you.
Leave it to Lane to throw us a curveball here.
Exactly.
Good grief. I'm sitting here thinking, because apparently you're so young, that I would assume that your generation has always known BQA, right? The BQA has just been something that's been part of the industry probably since your generation has entered the workforce. So I think that understanding the inception of BQA, that first quality audit, and talked about how much money we were leaving on the table because we weren't focused on quality. And I think understanding, that quality audit still takes place, goes every 5 years, comes back, gives us all the information to continue to focus as an industry on quality. So I think maybe taking BQA for granted might be something that folks don't know. My very first exposure to BQA, they brought in a subprimal, and I'm at my ranch. So we are 70 miles from town. They hauled that subprimal all the way out there. They cut that open and then served us a steak dinner, which is only done in our industry. But they showed us an injection site lesion, right? And it was really impactful. I bet your folks don't even know what that really is because we've done such a great job of eradicating it.
Yeah. Scott, your thoughts on that?
so many aspects about how we handle cattle today are so different than what we did back then. Um, it seems like we're keeping in mind that every step we take is a step closer to what the consumer is going to receive. And so we're thinking more about that, whether it's, the low stress cattle handling or, a variety of things that can all play into that and have an effect on quality. And even the feeding systems that we use, some of the products that we use, the implants and various other technologies that we're able to use today to get closer to optimizing, what our potential is. We've made a lot of genetic improvement as well, but I don't think we've come anywhere close to fully tapping that resource yet. And so there's still a lot of things for, as we ride off into the sunset, to leave in your very capable hands and keep going with.
Well, again, I've always said I've been 60 since I was 12 years old. So, Kim, just to point that out as well. But, I started shaving in like seventh grade, just 5 o'clock shadow. So,
My boys would be so
yeah,
jealous.
I know it's, and you see, I keep it now because, it's just a lot easier to keep it pruned down. But, when we look at strengths and maybe some obstacles that we're going to face for that generation that is maybe going to the video sale at maybe they're 10 years old and they're watching these prices right now and they're thinking about the future, like, yeah, I want to come back. I want to be a part of this family operation. And that wasn't the case for a lot of producers in the 80s. I think there's that generation that got maybe skipped over because of the economic challenges and whatnot. I think there's so much to consider as we look to the future of the obstacles and the opportunities that we'll face in all segments of the cattle and beef industry. What do you see as some of the biggest opportunities for this sector, that the cow calf from the feeding? What are some of these opportunities that you see on the horizon for that next generation? Kim?
Ooh, this is an exciting one, right? So opportunities, definitely just the next generation themselves. That is a huge opportunity because they don't have that shadow of the 80s, right? They don't have that. So that's huge. I'm going to say technology. I have 4 children, and my oldest 2 have graduated from college and come back to the ranch. And watching them embrace technology, introduce us to technology that maybe we didn't know, has been so fun to watch. But I will tell you that it has actually been a game changer. We've put in a lot of different types of technology in different ways that have been tremendous in saving us time and improving profitability. So super excited about that as an opportunity. Did you ask about challenges?
I was going to be my follow-up question, but if you're ready to jump in,
Oh,
you just take the reins. You go with those challenges or obstacles.
I guess I would say that a huge challenge that I see is actually that next generation again. How are the generation above me, how are we transferring those ranches, those farms down to that next generation? That succession planning is not new. This isn't a new challenge for us, but we do have a large number of producers that are reaching retirement age, whatever that might be, and how we're going to have those really hard conversations, right? Talking to I have to tell you, this is really personal to me. I just lost my father, so transferring my family's ranch to my sister and her husband, and then having my boys coming back to our ranch, my husband's family's ranch, this is just really personal for me. So I see so much opportunity to elevate this conversation, to help families sit down and have those really, really hard conversations. How are we going to keep these ranches in production in the face of all the development pressures and bringing that next generation back? So I think that's a huge challenge we have.
Yeah.
But I will say it's been done. Like, we transferred it on my side. It's so exciting to have my sister and her family running that ranch right now. So it can be done. It's really hard, but it's totally worth it.
Yep. Scott, same thing. Those opportunities, but some of those challenges in the feeding sector.
One of the big things I think is keeping these rural communities alive and vibrant. And a lot of that comes back to keeping local talent local. Whether they're related by family or just happen to grow up in that rural community, that they likely know about if there's a feeding company there or anything like that. And so when they get ready to graduate from high school and start looking to figure out what their next path is. Helping them to understand that there are very viable career paths in the feeding industry is a huge piece of the puzzle. Because if we can keep these rural communities alive, then that helps, hold people in the area, all the resources that come, good quality schools. We create that momentum that makes it easier to get employees, because like so many industries across the country right now, replacing employees that retire or move on to other things is much more difficult today than it's ever been.
Can I add on
Yeah,
that real
yeah.
quick? Because I think you just tapped on a really important piece right there. How to keep our rural communities vibrant and having our young people see a career path for them in those rural communities. I think it's even broader than just the feeding sector
Mhm.
or the cow-calf sector. I think we need to talk a lot about how can we get that generation, if they don't have a pathway to feeding or to the cow-calf sector, there's a lot of options, right? There's my wildlife biologist, fish and service, right? There's my BLM range con. There's so many other pathways that are part of production that I really hope we can encourage a lot of those recent college grads to look at those and look at those as being involved in beef production, right? Like they are a really critical component of what we do as an industry.
Yeah, and all a part of that too is technology. You mentioned that as well. But in the feeding space, what are some of these emerging technologies that maybe we haven't even considered yet? Maybe they're being discussed. Maybe they're being discussed here during the coffee breaks or at the end of the day down at the where the adult beverages are served with the barley pop. But how is that going to change the feeding aspect of things too with these emerging technologies or even technologies we haven't even thought of yet?
We talked a little bit about genetics on the cattle
Yeah.
side. I still think that's a huge thing that has a lot of upside potential that completely we don't completely understand what our endpoints could be. We're searching for those. Some of the other technologies, I think there's probably a lot of things to come at some point from the artificial intelligence. What that includes, remains to be seen. The idea of a autonomous feed truck has a lot of appeal.
Mhm.
At least it won't talk back to you. And when you say you're starting at trucks moving at 6 o'clock, it'll start moving at 6 o'clock. It's not considered just a suggestion. So there's I think there's a lot of neat things yet to come, and kind of excited to watch and see where we go.
I was at a field day the other day in Southwest Montana, and one of the livestock collar companies was presenting, and one of the items they were talking about was utilizing the collars for heat detecting during AI season, the other AI that we're so used to, and I'm just like, gosh darn. Like that hadn't even crossed my mind. Obviously, not having to spend $20,000 to $40,000 on a mile of fence. It was maybe top of mind too, or just moving cattle, but just using that or seeing what is cycling when it shouldn't be cycling, just based off of the temperature on something like that. How much time and resources that could save a producer as well. But as we talk about technology, Kim, what is that conversation like for Ira and yourself when your kids come to you saying, "Hey, this is something that we learned in college, or we just saw at a cattleman's college." What has that been like, and maybe what was that interaction like with your parents or your in-laws when implementing a new process? Why do you think maybe that you listen maybe a little different, or what is that vetting process like?
Oh, that is a great question. So I have to admit, my husband is an early adopter. He loves technology. He is leading the charge at the trade show, finding all the things to do. So when my kids bring an idea to us and say, "Hey, have you thought about this?" My husband's all in. I'm the heavy. I'm like, "Okay, wait a minute. Let's run the numbers. Is this really going to work?" Like I'm the bad guy. But I will say, I think my husband is that way because when he would go to his parents, go to his father with an idea, there was a lot of recalcitrance there, right? A lot of, I'm not an early adopter, right? Let's really wait and see if this is tried and true. So I think that has had a huge impact on how we're transitioning to our kids, right? Like how we're transitioning. Part of that succession plan is knowledge transfer. And so helping set our kids up for transferring the knowledge of how we're running this ranch, a part of it is this tech adoption, right? Helping them understand why mom's the heavy, what are the numbers behind this, how to make this work, and come to me with a plan. Show me how this is going to work on the ranch, profitability
Yeah.
wise.
Yep. Yeah. Same from the feeding sector. How's that next generation of managers and yard riders? How could the technology or just tried and true principles, but having a manager listen to that next generation and help that next generation also implement while they move up in management?
So much of what we do depends on clear communication. Communication is such a really cool deal when it actually happens. And so if we can utilize some of this technology to help um, set what our expectations are and clearly express what those expectations are and related to that, create a mechanism to follow through on that and look and see what else we didn't think about at the time we made that decision that can play into refining that decision the next time around. All leads to the efficiencies. In the feed yard world, efficiency is everything. You got to have conversion and manage costs and all those types of things. And they're a data machine. Feed yard cranks out all kinds of data every day. So having a means to quickly and easily and sift through that and learn from it and then present it back in a usable form is very worthwhile and very appealing.
And a part of efficiency is obviously labor.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter what sector we're in agriculture, labor continues to be an issue. And so, what is your advice to that next generation of feedlot managers on the interaction with employees, listening to their needs, and maybe also maybe talking with them about some of their concerns that maybe there could be some better areas to focus that attention on? I guess, how important is it for that next generation of leaders in feedlots to just understand the dynamics of working with people, managing them, but also leading them? And that all leads to efficiency as well. Less turnover. That's a lot easier.
It truly does. The old school my way or the highway management style is been gone for a long time, but in practice. But there's still some of that mindset that's out there, and it didn't work then, and it doesn't work now unless you're wanting to do everything yourself. Again, listening to them, to your point, and asking, trying to find out what is important to them. If you can build the package, the total compensation package, which may not always include money, there might be other things that can flow into that to help them feel like they're connected to the organization, that they have a say in what's going on, and that you're interested in their opinion. Because they're the ones out there doing the work. And as you're trying to manage that work, listening to what they're seeing front hand, and I've always felt our job as managers is to be the support group for the employees. We want to make them successful. And if we can help them be successful, it comes back and, like you said earlier, just applies to the efficiency equation as well.
Now, flip that as well. Put yourself in the employee shoes. Maybe it's their first day on the job and they're starting at the bottom on a feedlot as well. And as they work their way up, what are some of the questions that they should be asking of their employers as well, or maybe some advice on how they can interact with management? Because sometimes us young people, we come in, we have that idea, and we're like, gosh darn, we want this implemented, or we want to see this change, or we want to do it different. What's a different approach? What's your advice to that young employee out there on how to interact with management and owners?
It's interesting to watch some of those younger employees work. I don't know if it's because they're so used to such a digital world that their mind works a little faster. Seems like some of the questions they come up with or the decisions they make, or that they process information differently, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so if they observe something that needs to be brought up, I would encourage everybody to, if you see something, say something. Just ask a question. Why? I'm not embarrassed to have somebody ask me why we do something. I don't think any of us can afford to be that way anymore.
Mhm.
to the point earlier about trying to save time and take full advantage of what we have. I think anything we can do to be more efficient, even on our time management side, makes all the sense in the world.
Now, as we look at that next generation of volunteer leaders, you both are volunteer leaders. You're taking time away from your operation to help set up a path forward for the success of the generation we're talking about right now, and that generation that hasn't even been born yet. And when we look at that, Cam, what are some of the experiences you would encourage that next generation of leaders, whether they are young producers just out of college, they're coming back, or maybe they're more experienced in their field and are thinking of just stepping up into leadership? What are some of the experiences that they should pursue, whether it's local, state, national, or some education courses that you really think could help them better themselves as an individual, but also as a volunteer leader?
Well, I think that's a little hard to answer because there's not really a specific career track, right? So I think you need to find what you're interested in, right? Find what you're interested in, do your homework, right? Really understand that issue or that topic. But then my next advice would be to be curious, right? If I had stayed on the Idaho Beef Council and only did that, I would never be sitting in this chair, right? So you have to be curious about the industry and take the time to educate yourself. I tell my kids all the time, you have to be teachable, right? And I think that's a life skill, right? Me myself, I still have to be teachable and have this desire to learn. So any situation where they can do a deep dive on something they're interested in and have the opportunity to pursue further learning, I think is really important. But I think a really important skill set, doesn't matter what role you find yourself in, are people skills. Whatever leadership you find yourself in, it's all about people. Every bit of leadership is about connecting with people, talking with people, building relationships, building coalitions, whatever it takes. So those people skills, pick up the phone, have these hallway conversations, figure out how to find middle ground, right? What we can work together on, and then make sure that what we are working on is for the common good, right? Is this going to elevate the industry as a whole? And I think those are really important skill sets to have, whatever leadership path you choose to take.
Scott, same area. What are your thoughts on that leadership journey and what folks should consider, no matter what, whether it's volunteering at church in a leadership role, the school board, or in a cattle organization?
That is a really good question. And I guess my initial advice would just, don't be timid about it. We all need to get out, stretch ourselves a little bit, get outside of our comfort zone. And, every day in our roles here that we're each in today, we're all doing that and encouraging that next generation to do that as well. Step outside, do something that you don't normally do. And to me, that's just always a very rewarding process.
Can you think about a time where you had a learning opportunity that made the biggest impact on your decision-making and interaction in leadership? Something that maybe it was an aha moment or someone told you something that's set you out straight. Does something come to top of mind?
Yes. October 27th, 1997. There was a blizzard blew in. It was a 60-degree day to start the day, 18 inches of snow, a jam-packed full feed yard, and the next morning had 28,000 cattle outside because the snow had packed in behind the bunks so hard that they're just walking over the neck rail. Watching the way our employees responded to that, because it took about 8 weeks to sort everything back to where they were supposed to be. Thanksgiving disappeared that year for some reason. Anyway, there was such a separation in the employee base there. The cream rose to the top, and it was absolutely obvious those that were engaged and wanted to do everything that it took to get things back to that way, and they intently listened. They asked the right questions, and it was a smooth, methodical process. The others that were just looking for an escape route, we helped some of that along, just because you couldn't afford, with everything that was going on, you needed to react in a constructive manner, but
Yeah.
interesting times.
Well, it is, and it's always interesting or hard times that really kind of really stick in the back of your mind, or are those learning opportunities. And Kim, do you have a moment like that where you've been like, oh, that made me a better leader?
Oh, absolutely. Sadly, I have a lot of them. Can I only choose one here? I would actually, because I mentioned being on the Idaho Beef Council. So if I go back to that time when I was on the board, our board decided we wanted to pursue a state increase, right? We needed to increase our state dollars. And I think we had this discussion probably in December, maybe November, December. And I was all in, like, oh, absolutely, we need to do this. Let's do it now. We needed to pursue some legislation in the state to make this happen. Our legislature comes in session in January. I was like, oh, let's go for it. Let's do it. And thankfully, cooler heads prevailed and made me sit back, and we spent a full year going around the state, talking to all the producers, all those local meetings. We went to Farm Bureau, dairy, sale yards, local cattlemen's, and really talked about why we needed to increase this, what the diminished buying power of the dollar was, what we would do with those additional dollars. Really took time to build that foundation for producers around the state. And a year later, Idaho Cattle Association said, yeah, we'll get behind this. They got the legislation through, and we passed an additional 50 cents. And I think about that a lot because I want to dive in and do things, right? Like jumping with both feet. That's a great idea. Let's do it tomorrow. And it really taught me how important it is to slow down and get other people take in their thoughts, get their ideas, really build a coalition of support for an idea, and then go forward with it. It was a huge learning experience for me.
And just talking about your leadership journey, this will be a question for both of you. Was there a moment in time in your life where you're like, I want to step up, I want to lead? Or was it instilled at a young age, whether 4-H or FFA, or just an experience where you said, you know what, I do want to dedicate my time as a leader. I want to step up. And whether that's in the local community or working your way up within your respective organizations like NCBA, did you always want to be on a path to be a rancher, to be a mother, and to be a leader of a cattle organization?
Always the rancher, always for sure. Definitely the mom. Never doubted that. I never said, ooh, someday I would like to be NCBA president. Absolutely never crossed my radar at all. Honestly, just a few years ago when I made the decision to interview for the officer team, even then, I was still thinking, oh, I don't know, do I really have what it takes? Should I really step into this role? So when I first started getting involved with my local cattle association and leading some efforts locally and then within the state, Beef Council, all the way along, I guess I never really saw myself as a leader, but other people did, right? And there was a lot of people that came alongside me, encouraged me, supported me, mentored me onto this path until finally the realization hit, oh, maybe I am on the path. Hate to get personal, but I'm on the path that God set out for me, right? I really believe this is a skill set that God has given to me, and I need to use it to help the industry as a whole. So I don't know, long answer to your question.
There's no long answer on a podcast. We can talk as long as we want to.
That's what I'm afraid of, actually.
Scott, for yourself, leadership, helping manage people, was that something that you always set out to do, or did you have someone maybe give you a kick saying, hey, you do really well in this role, whether that is in feedlot management or in leadership within your state, local, and national organizations?
I guess early on, my focus was all around production and just, thinking about the nuts and bolts of making that happen. And once I moved up a notch or two to where, had some other responsibility, realized that, okay, my eyes are supposed to be looking over here at looking at the processes and evaluating the processes and how we can make those better. And, the people are fundamental to any of that. And so I guess it was just a gradual thing over time. I don't know that it was anything that I'd originally set out to do, but have been involved with a lot of different areas that kept contributing to making that picture more clear. And Yeah, it's just one of those things that's been a little bit organic and just kind of come along over time. It's a great way to give back. This industry has been extremely rewarding, to us, and I'm grateful for that every day and the opportunity to, act as a steward of what we've been blessed with, and it's just part of a cool deal.
Now, as you look towards the future, what are you most optimistic about for the cattle and beef business, and what it may hold for that next generation of leaders, cow-calf producers, managers? Scott, I'll let you go first, but what are you most optimistic about?
Number one is the people. It's just that's what keeps drawing me back into this industry, and wanting to do more with it because of the people. It's a relatively small fraternity of people in in the beef production area, and getting to know them regardless of what state they're from and what segment they belong to is just a really cool deal. The other piece that to me is pretty exciting is that we have a consumer right now that loves our product. And, we have worked hard to get there. It's going to take effort to maintain that and continue to grow that, but that's an exciting piece of the puzzle right there.
Kim, same area. What are you most optimistic about?
So when you asked that question, it really made me think about where I was last week. I had two fascinating opportunities last week. First, I was able to go to the CS plant in Idaho and watch the researchers on the red meat yield study. And I think that is going to be fascinating and probably be a game changer for the industry. If we can move our yield grade to a red meat yield, we're focused on increasing the lean product. This is huge. And so that one, a lot of optimism there. And then the second event I went to was the North American Grazing Lands Congress that was hosted by USRSB and the Public Lands Council. And there were so many people. We spent one day touring different ranches, and there were so many people on that tour that weren't just cattle producers, right? We had folks there from outdoor enthusiasts, sportsmen. We had hunters. We had fishermen. We had moderate conservation groups. There were definitely your agency folks. Also, we had people from the UN, right? The FAO, Food and Ag Organization. They were there as well. And the conversations that I heard as we were touring this ranch and riding on a bus, right, for hours on end was how these folks were recognizing that the goals they might have for their own organizations, that their goals were hinging on the success of our industry, right? If you look at habitat conservation goals, that takes place on working ranches and working farms. And so I think I'm so excited that we have these adjacent organizations, adjacent groups that want to be a part of what we're doing, and in some way they're invested in our success. I think that really gives me some optimism for the future, and kind of excited to see what we can do with that.
Well, again, it's a brave new world out there, and a lot of exciting times. Technology still scares me, but truly, if it could help us be more profitable and be better stewards of our land, better caretakers of our livestock as well. And of course, just trying to keep that next generation in mind, or a generation that never grew up on a farm or ranch. I think that's exciting as well too. Any last thoughts? I know you got a busy evening here and you have a hard stop coming up, but any last thoughts, just anything that you thought of during this conversation that we didn't get to cover, or just some last pieces of advice or wisdom you want to share with our friends tuning in today?
Yeah, I think if we're talking about leadership, right, and you're asking about what our leadership journey looked like, I think that I won't speak for Scott, but I've reached the point in my career where I need to be mentoring that next generation, right? I need to be identifying who those emerging leaders are and coming alongside them like folks did for me, right? And letting them know I see leadership skills in you. And then helping match them. Where can I help these people plug in to grow those skills? If I'm helping appoint people to a task force or to a committee or whatever it might be. Is there a role there that might be a great fit for an emerging leader and help them grow their leadership skills? So that's where I find myself at. That's the position I'm in now, is more of a mentor than a mentee, which is a different side of the relationship, but I'm really enjoying it.
And Scott?
Somewhat along the same lines, but view ourselves as servant leaders, to where again, it comes back to our responsibility is to help the people under us be successful, and that's basically what it boils down to. And sometimes that's much easier said than done, but again, it comes back to the communication and just connecting. That we're a network of people, and in order for a network to work, you have to have solid connections. And so that's a lot of what we do, is just, whether it's inside our own company, inside our own family, all those connections have value.
Very well said. And honestly, I should just let you wrap the whole show up with that statement there, because I'll probably fumble the close here. But I just want to thank you both for sitting down with us here today. It's been a long day, a lot of conversations, a lot of productive conversations, and a lot of back and forth on a lot of different topics in the regional meetings that took place here earlier today. And again, it's those connections. It's people saying, that's a good idea, but we can improve it, or that's not a very good idea, and this is why. And I think that having those conversations are so important, and a lot of those are happening here this week, and of course will happen at CattleCon coming up in 2027 as well. But I want to thank you both for sharing your insights, and hopefully I didn't throw too many hard balls at you, or curve balls, or you're probably thinking, oh, Lane, just wrap this up, right? Kim, is that your...
Well, no, just kidding.
But thank you both for joining us here today.
Thanks so much, Lane.
And for all of our friends that are joining us here today as well, if you have not done so, make sure and subscribe to the Cattleman's Call, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple, or watching on YouTube as well, because you can watch these conversations. We just appreciate you joining us here today and answering the Cattleman's Call, but make sure and subscribe and share with your friends as well. With that, I'm Lane Nordlund. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with Lane Nordlund. For more information, visit ncba.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast today.